Raptors Weekly for the week of March the 23rd. The Raptors have ended a week where they've gone 3 out of 4. And the last podcast, which was hosted by Will in my absence, promised brighter horizons. And Andrew, the Raptors did deliver on those horizons with 3 out of 4 wins. So before we talk about that ugly Chicago loss that I'm sure has got you down and has got me down a little bit too, but let's talk about the 3 out of 4 wins the Raptors had against Indiana, Minnesota, and just today against the New York Knicks, 106-89. Good week.
Yeah, it was a classic Eastern Conference week. You play 3 bad teams and 1 good one, and it all looks nice.
Well, so Minnesota from the West, so whatever.
But they are not exactly the cream of the crop.
Did you watch the minigame?
I did watch the minigame. It was fun. I don't know what Minnesota's doing by making Kevin Martin the feature of their offense in an attempt to win games instead of featuring Andrew Wiggins, but sure.
A close game that, 105-100 the final there. DeMar DeRozan with a good game. The Raptors had to kind of pull that off from it was a close game throughout. It wasn't like they blew them out.
And Minnesota's not trying to lose. They've got a lot of talent at different positions that don't really fit that well together. But I mean, Kevin Martin was hitting a lot of ridiculous shots. They were getting a lot of points out of transition, and we all know the Raptors want to give the ball away on occasion.
And that was preceded by the Raptors beating the Indiana Pacers in Indiana in a blowout, 117-98. That's one game that I actually didn't catch, and I was surprised that it was that big of a margin.
Yeah, a little bit surprising. The Raptors played better defensively than they have in the past, and really, I mean, Indiana had been sort of surging back into the playoff race by really locking down on defense, and the Raptors just kind of blew the doors off them and put it together for at least one game this week.
And
sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, there's nothing much to go ahead to really, because after that it's Chicago, and that was the game that the Raptors rested Kyle Lowry with some back contusions, and he was rested against the Knicks as well. The Chicago loss was it kind of soured the whole week, because the way the Raptors are playing right now, you can kind of look at the schedule and tell if it's going to be a win or a loss. If they're playing a remotely half-decent team, which has kind of got their shit together, you know it's going to be a loss, and that's what Chicago was. And the rest of the bunch for the week were basically, the minnows of the league, and we took care of them. The Raptors are kind of in that mood where if it's a quality opponent, even remotely so, like they're going to struggle. And against Chicago, man, it was pretty gutless.
Yeah. I thought that they were going to drop the Chicago game. I didn't necessarily think it would happen the way it would, with Noah and Mirotic just embarrassing us and Dunleavy. Those 3 guys were I think there was 8 or 9 different highlight passes on cuts to the basket from the elbow with those guys. Usually ball movement breaks down the Raptors, but not one pass ball movement. That was rough.
Yeah, that Noah beyond the 3-point line and a screen being set around Gasol and Terrence Ross being back cut by Dunleavy. I think we saw that 3 times in the game, and twice within like 4 minutes. And it just spoke to the lack of preparation defensively that the Raptors have. I know the Bulls are a great offensive team this year, but you just expect a little bit more alertness from the Raptors. And not just the first quarter, it just wasn't present throughout the game. The Bulls shot like 58% in the first half. Like, this was like one of those games where, like, if you actually win this game, suddenly everything looks a lot better. But they just got humiliated on every front. It wasn't – the offense didn't work. Defensively, they were shambles. Nobody had a good game. Just embarrassing on pretty much every front you can think of.
Yeah, anyone who thinks that just because Derrick Rose and Jimmy Butler are out for the Bulls that they're done has not paid attention to anything that Coach Tibbs has done with that team the last 3 years. And they've got Pau Gasol and Mirotic playing fantastic for them right now as well. But on defense, the Raptors just are doing such a poor job of communicating around screens, and there are so many few instances you can think of this year in really any game where there are frequent examples of solid help defense and rotating down low to try and make up for some of those gaps. And if the Raptors aren't set in their defense, there's no one that's defending the rim. Yeah,
and like once in a while they'll have a possession where they'll actually close out 2 guys on the perimeter and then challenge the mid-range jumper after the guy drives in, and everybody's like, yeah, that's good defense. But throughout the 48 minutes, you're not going to find many instances of that. What you're going to find is a missed rotation, a missed closeout, and just two guys covering one guy on the perimeter and an easy pass back out to the guy at the other end for the three-point shot. It's that, and I talked about in the post-game report for the Bulls that, we're in game 70 now, and the Raptors still have very little idea on what their defensive responsibilities are, and they don't seem to be a unit on defense at all, and it's very much disjointed. It's almost like these 70 games haven't amounted to any kind of learnings on the defensive end at all.
No, they've stepped backwards. I think the team realizes that they are not equipped to play the kind of defense that Casey has them playing, and I don't think they particularly like playing that defense. And they're losing their investment in it. They're working less together, and they don't really seem like they're that entrenched in the idea of wanting to play that system, and it's really showing.
Yeah. And in the Chicago game, before you get to Valanciunas, I mean, like I made the point that like you have guys on this roster who are good players. Like I find it appalling that James Johnson, a guy who does so many things well, still hasn't nailed down a rotation spot on this team. It can't be that he doesn't bring enough to the table. Like, it's got to be from a coaching perspective that you haven't found a way to make a very good player useful in the rotation. And we're still kind of struggling. Is he a 2? Is he a 3? Is he a 4? Is he off the bench? Is he like we're still asking basic questions which should be answered in training camp on what a guy's position on the team is. And like, I just find this to be an indictment on Casey that he hasn't found a way to embed Ross and Johnson or even Tyler Hansbrough on a consistent basis into a rotation. We're still kind of almost like in post-training camp mode where we're still trying to figure out what the ideal lineup is.
Yeah, there's not really been an attempt to try to find a way to put a guy like Ross, or Ross more so than the others at least, but especially James Johnson and some of the other guys, is trying to find out, okay, how can this person best succeed and what's the best way for them to help the team to work together, and how can we maybe find that lineup, and then not just give it 8 minutes of run over a 2-game course one time and then no, that's it, but give it some real time to develop and actually see if there's something there, some chemistry that can develop, or if it does or doesn't develop, try to just tweak it and see how you can actually get something of James Johnson, how you can maybe get 33 minutes a game out of Jonas Valanciunas, how you can maybe get consistent productivity out of Terrence Ross. I think that, it is really disappointing that he hasn't been able to experiment in a way that's tried to find that, and I think that the way that he's managed the minutes and the attempts to do so has hurt the confidence and the emotional investment from those guys in the team instead of building that, and it's been a problem.
Yeah, and you can even add guys like Landry Fields to a lesser degree to that list who are talented, who have shown they've got something to bring to the table, but have yet to really contribute to the team. And we'd be remiss not to talk about Jonas Valanciunas. He had one field goal attempt against the Bulls, and I'm not convinced that even if he had 30, it would have mattered. But just that a guy, JV here I'm talking about, who's had good games against Chicago in the past, is limited to one field goal and isn't even a part of the offense. It's just the balance here, the lack of touches for him, the lack of court balance here is so mind-boggling that when somebody asked me in the comment section, explain why JV has only one field goal, like I didn't have an answer.
Yeah, on a game when Kyle Lowry is not playing, when you are clearly outmatched by this Chicago team and you're down 20, 22, 23 points and the game is coming to an end, not just in the last 3 minutes, but look, this game was over with 9-10 minutes left. Instead of trying to do what clearly hasn't worked for the last 8 minutes leading up to garbage time to see if something miraculously different might happen, why not spend that entire quarter trying to find out what works with James Johnson and Ross and some weird lineups, trying to get Valanciunas touches, trying to see what happens when the offense flows through him, get his confidence rolling, get him a big amount of shots to get more and more comfort out there. Why are we not accepting it? I think it would be a better idea to accept a loss in that point and try to make something of it than just fumble through until you have 2 minutes left and it doesn't matter who you play. Yeah.
And just circling back on Mirotic for a second, man, I think the Raptors put at some point in the game, I don't know if it was by intentionally or this just happened by chance, I counted, and there were about 7 to 8 different defenders on Mirotic for whatever reason, including JV all the way down to Vasquez. And everybody was playing him incorrectly. They were closing him out with the wrong angle so he could drive easily, or they were just letting him shoot. It just felt like the Raptors did not know there was a dude on the Bulls who can shoot, drive, and pass extremely well and has been doing that throughout the course of the season.
Mirotic is really good. He's not the only person who's killed them like that. Like that's the kind of one of the types of players who have really hurt them this year. Chris Middleton on Milwaukee beat them up one game as well for the same kind of thing. If you're a player that guys aren't taking as seriously as maybe they should be, and you can dribble, you cut really smartly, and you can space and move around the 3-point line, the way that their defense moves around trying to trap aggressively and sort of pseudo switch and not really knowing what they're doing, those guys have just punished them over and over again, because it's really easy to find freedom of movement when you're playing against the Raptors, especially if the ball's moving away on the other side. Mm-hmm. You can find some empty space to work with. And if you can shoot or dribble or cut, and if you can do all three of those things, then one of them is almost always going to be available to you as you have someone trying to desperately close out towards you.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's move on to the Knicks for a second. And the Bulls' loss was so disappointing. It's just that, I don't know, man. It just felt like that if you could win that one, things would just feel a little better. The morale would be a little higher. You'd finally beat a good team. But nay, it wasn't even close. And then today against the Knicks, the Raptors did win that. Andrea Bargnani, Andrew got booed. I know you didn't watch the game, but he got introduced and he got booed. Yeah, he got booed.
Wow.
And pregame.
For shame.
And pregame, they asked him, what he thought of his years in Toronto, like what kind of legacy he left or what have you. And he kept repeating the same answer, and he just kept saying, Toronto is a place where I played the first 7 years of my career. Toronto is a place where I played the first 7 years of my career.
The PR person just worked on him with that one line, getting the pronunciation down pat so they wouldn't have to dub over it later on. That was what he was going with.
Yeah, that was his thing. And I was watching the Knicks broadcast on this one, and they kept mentioning that talking to Bargnani, the hate the Raptors have towards him, or the Raptor fans have towards Bargnani. Was it Clyde Frazier? Clyde Frazier? Yeah.
Yeah.
He goes, the feeling is definitely mutual. And that's what
sure.
That's what he said.
All right. I mean that is fair. Like, we gave him a very hard time towards the end of his career here, and we've given him a really hard time whenever he's come back. And I mean, it's a little bit silly, but also, I mean, he's pretty bad.
I still don't see how we don't honor him. I don't see how you can honor Mo Pete, Charles Oakley, and those guys and not honor Andrea Bargnani for being the leading scorer on this team, for averaging 20-plus points for all those years, or whatever, 18 points, whatever it was, for 7 years, being a good offensive player, and holding a lot of, being top 5 in a lot of team records, including scoring. So I just don't see it.
Sure. I mean, I think that it's definitely time for the Raptors to get to the place with Bargnani where you can hopefully get, after like an amicable split, not even an amicable split, a bad split with someone who you once had a relationship with, and you don't have to constantly wish ill upon each other. It can be like, you can be at the same place, see each other across the room, and you don't have to have a conversation. You don't have to pretend to be nice. You don't have to bring him back for Andrea Bargnani night. But you can just sort of quietly nothing him and just sort of accept each other's existence quietly.
Yeah.
Hopefully we'll get there.
Yeah. You want to talk about Dwane Casey's lack of effort comments after every post game? So after every loss, he's his post game presser has something like sorry, listeners, still got the cough. The bronchitis is not fully gone away yet. His comments are basically, we need 7 to 8 guys who are willing to play, who are willing to, bust their gut. I almost said bust something else. We need 7 or 8 guys who want to bust a gut and give the effort out. And, he's making it sound like the losing is because of lack of effort on the defensive end, not so much lack of execution. And that's his constant theme in post-game reports, is that we didn't try hard enough. We didn't play enough. We need guys who want to do this. And even Jesse Murmas, who looks like he's high, man. He talks and sounds like he's completely baked. Even in his halftime interviews, they asked him what's up with the Raptors, and he's like, they're not feeling us right now. Like, we're not trying hard enough. It always comes down to effort. Like, do you believe, Andrew, that the team's has an effort issue at this point?
I think there's something to that, but I don't think that's the explanation. I think that it's a reflection of how, I think on offense and defense, we've seen that Dwane Casey's approach is sort of a Sisyphean, pushing the rock back up the hill.
You want to explain that one, man? Like, we don't all have PhDs here.
Are you aware of the myth of Sisyphus? That's not a great word to say on radio. Where he's doomed to spend eternity just pushing a rock that he's chained up to up a hill, and then as soon as he gets up the hill, it rolls back down. And he just has to keep pushing it back up, never actually accomplishing his goal.
So I think we did find the episode title though, but go ahead.
The approach on defense has kind of felt like that to me, where he has this idea. He wants to do it this way. Here's what we're going to do. This is the theme we're going to play, and this is how we're going to get it done. And it's not working. And his approach is, well, the reason it's not working is because the guys aren't trying hard enough to make it work. At first, they didn't learn it. They weren't rotating right. They weren't doing what they're supposed to do. They can do it. They're just not doing it right. It's not a flaw in the system. It's a flaw in the execution. And I think that there might have been something to that, but I also think that it's a flawed system for this team. And I think that what we're seeing now is the guys on the floor know it's not working, and they're frustrated that there's nothing to change that because they don't think they can make that system work. So they're probably not actually trying as hard as they maybe even once were, because it seems like it's not going to work. They're frustrated with it. They're not convinced. They're not buying in. So yes, now you're seeing guys not necessarily putting in the full effort level, but that's because I think they think the ship has sailed.
Yeah. Yeah, well put. I totally agree here. I'd say other than maybe Ross, whose just physical demeanor looks lazy, I can't say there people are actually sandbagging it or are not putting an honest shift in. I think guys work really hard. DeRozan, Kyle Lowry, Patrick Patterson, even JV, I see them putting a lot of effort out on the floor, and it's just the ask that the ask of them on defense is just too great right now. They're all being asked to individually produce great defensive games without the backing of a system behind them which supports them. And asking somebody to just D down somebody or just stay in front of someone or make excessive rotations, they're going to eventually fail. And they have failed all season long. Our defensive rating speaks for itself. So at this point, they're almost in a malaise where they kind of know it doesn't work. And they know that even if they try really hard, it's not going to work because they've tried hard and it hasn't worked. And it's just that insecurity of having a system behind them is kind of hurting them at this point. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I don't think it's an effort issue at all. I think if there's one thing Casey has done a great job as coach throughout his time in Toronto is to change the culture, to change the effort that we see on the court. So kudos to him for that. But I don't think that's the reason we're losing to Chicago by 20 points or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, he also can't come out and say, it's a poorly structured defense,
Yeah.
That's on me. We'll fix that next year. That's not something he can come out. I don't think he thinks that, but what kind of a response are we looking for him in his defense? I'm not sure what he's going to come out and say.
Yeah. All right, man. Let's take a quick break and then check the Twitter polls and answer some questions there. Welcome back to part 2 of the podcast, and we're going to take some Twitter questions now because we care about what the people have to say, and Twitter is the best way to find out what the people have to say. Isn't that right, Andrew? Is Twitter the best way to find out what people have to say about the team?
Twitter's the best way to find out anything in the world.
How many followers are you up to?
It fluctuates between 73 and 78 depending on how the week goes. So
how many of them are spam?
I don't know how many of them. Only 2 of them are people I know.
Right.
How many of them are spam or readers or just random people or weird cousins? I'm not sure, but
all right.
That's it. Not a lot of me pimping that account.
Yeah. Okay. So it's at Marmalade Jacko, by the way. Let's see if that gives you a bump.
Ooh.
So the first question comes from Jay Friedman. Jay Friedman 23 asks. Psycho T reliving his March Madness days. This is on the heels of your man Tyler Hansbrough.
Stop it.
Having a pretty good game against the Knicks here tonight. Did you? I know you didn't catch the game, but let me just read you what he was up to here. 7 for 8, 18 points, 5 rebounds, only 1 turnover, and 4 for 5 from the free throw line. Tyler Hansbrough, resurgence.
Yeah, let's give him a $5 million contract next year. Look, it's a game against the Knicks. The Knicks rested Clay Anthony early because why not rest your second round pick? That's where they're at.
Yeah.
The most relevant thing Tyler Hansbrough did this week, aside from getting 18 points, was coming up in the Dan Le Batard show's their name bracket. Their bracket they're doing for March Madness is guys There's people in sports who look like something. So, for example, Tyler Hansbrough got 2. The only Raptor to make the list had 2 things. The question is, does Tyler Hansbrough look more like someone who is haunted by ghosts that only he can see? Or Tyler Hansbrough looks like someone who does combat roles while playing laser tag?
Poor Tyler Hansbrough. His problem is that he has had the same haircut since high school.
It's not a good look.
It's not a good look, and he's got to grow it out. Do something different, like add a Birdman-ish tinge to his game so he looks a little meaner, develop something. It might even help him get his next contract. Because right now he's got that like dumb look to him, you know what I mean? Like even though he's a decent player, it just he just looks like he's a bit of a doofus.
Tyler Hansbrough is the only white guy who's played his style of hard foul, fake tough guy, like just hustle type game as a big man in the last 15 years who hasn't been just covered in tats. Why is he not on that street corner? He's
basically your ideal mid-90s big man stuck in a different era. Like he would be perfect on the Knicks in the 90s or the Bulls or any of those teams that require like a tough guy inside who fouls a lot and isn't there for just like some elbow grease. He's the type of guy. He's just in the wrong era. And today I saw him like catch a pick and roll pass and finish with Vasquez, and he made it, but it looked so awkward that I'm like, even though he made that, let's not ever do that again. Yeah,
look, I take a dump on Tyler Hansbrough pretty much every week, and I'm going to keep doing it because I just don't like his game at all. But it's not that he's not devoid of talent. He's not awful. It's just that like he was great in college for a reason. But that reason is he could physically dominate boys. He gets physically dominated by men. He is not tall enough to dominate down low, and he's not athletic enough to compensate for that size, and he doesn't have a great skill game to sort of shoot around that. So all he's left with is 5 fouls.
So potentially looking at playoff matchups here, let's say Chicago, Washington, or Milwaukee, and even Miami, let's put that in there. Against what team would Tyler Hansbrough be most useful?
Neither of them. We said this last year going into the playoffs. Everyone's
got to pick one.
There was this it came up in the podcast. Is he going to play? And I said no. Like Tyler Hansbrough will average less than 60 seconds a game in the playoffs, and that's what happened.
All right, fair enough. Let's move on. Okay, the next one comes from @DanHughes11, and he asks, does Masai sign JV long term this summer? We usually defer these summertime talk to later podcasts, but quickly checking Champ Sports and the Raptors page for it, we'll find that Jonas Valanciunas has what is he at now? So next year we got a player option for him. A team option for him, which
let me put that. It's $4.6 million.
Yeah, we're gonna pick that up. Yeah. But the question is, like, at this point, do we actually sign him to a deal? So let me pose a hypothetical here. Okay. With DeMar DeRozan, we signed him at this juncture to a 4-year, $40 million deal, so $10 million a year per extension. If you have the opportunity to do that with JV, do you do that, Andrew?
10 times out of 10.
Explain yourself a little bit.
Sure. So you look at what's going to happen is you're going to need to replace that guy, and especially as a piece moving forward who has a reasonably high ceiling. He's probably never going to be the best big man in the NBA, but his ceiling projects to be a very, very good starting big man. And to replace that is something really difficult to do, evidenced by the fact that if you let him go to the restricted free agent market, somebody is going to give him far above his market value. You are then going to have to match what could be a near max contract, or probably a max contract, because of the free agency money that's going to be available that summer. If you don't want to give JV a max deal, then you try to sign him this coming summer. I think that he is got a lot of potential. He's really good. You can bring him in moving forward. You continue to develop. That position takes a long time to develop. He's got great touch, good size, and he can shoot free throws. If you can't find a position for him in a place for him to thrive in your team moving forward, then that's on you, I think. So
were you on board with the DeRozan extension at the time?
Pardon me?
Were you on board with the DeRozan extension when it happened?
I was a little miffed by it when it happened, and about 6 months after it was signed, I was okay with it.
Oh. Yeah, I'm with you. I think $10 million with a CBA, which is going to get bigger. There's more. It's going to increase by 10% at least. You're going to have a lot more money under the cap, and JV, I think, has shown promise throughout his career so far. And if not him, then who? Like, you're not going to big center 7-footers, skilled 7-footers who can rebound and, have diverse offensive games are going to be difficult to find. So you got to replace him, and who are you going to replace him with? So if you got the opportunity to lock this guy long term, I'd say do it with in a heartbeat. I'd say I'm more on board with signing JV to 4 years, 40 than I was with DeRozan, just because the position is so much harder to fill.
Can't teach someone to be 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
I think that the biggest concern I would have is that he might not sign that. I think that there's a lot of NBA agents who are going to be who are just looking at the tea leaves and saying there is a crazy amount of money available in 2016 with teams trying to clear their cap and the cap jumping exponentially. And I think that a lot of guys from that draft year might have their agents talk them into a Jimmy Butler type scenario where whatever the team offers you, unless it's the max, don't take it, play your way through, and try to get the max in the restricted free agent market.
Yeah, it could be. And JV stock is high around the league. It's Dwane Casey might not think highly of him, of his offensive game, or he holds him to pretty tough standards. But just listen to NBA announcers and like halftime interviews across the league, even guys on NBA TV. When they speak of Jonas Valanciunas, it's always in endearing terms, and they always compliment his skill, his development. And I think he even got an All-Star vote this year from somewhere. Jeff Van Gundy. So he's got the Jeff Van Gundy bump too. So I don't know. I would jump at the chance of signing JV long term.
Yeah, look, it's really hard to come up with more. Even if you are not a Jonas fan, it's really hard to come up with 20 different starting NBA centers who are better than him. Which means that even if you want to go that way, there are 10 teams who would be upgrading at center by bringing him in. You only need one, maybe two of those teams to decide that they really want him in order to have that max contract get offered. So it's going to happen if it gets there.
Yeah. So the next question comes from @Kev_Antonio, who asks, why do the Raptors refuse to move off the ball in their offensive sets? All 5 players aren't spreading the floor. Yeah, and it's a fairly basic question, and I bring it up because even against the Knicks today, I just saw that the amount of dribble handoffs we do.
Every time?
It's like on every possession. I think just the nature of our offense is that it starts off with like a 2-man game on one side of the court, and it's not a 2-man game which can lead to a pass for a third guy. It's specifically a 2-man game which goes big man, hands off to DeMar DeRozan or Lou Williams, and then they decide how they want to take the possession. So right off the bat, it's not utopian or socialistic offense. It's very much geared to a couple of guys, and it's up to them to take the offense where it goes.
It's very anathema to the way a lot of the top teams play right now. It's not based on flow. It's not based on drive and kick, pick and rolls that are designed to break down the defense before you sort of let the ball find the open man. The Raptors spend like 10 seconds trying to slug their way into a dribble handoff just to get the ball in someone's hand to start what they're usually trying to run, which is a simple action with maybe one action off the ball leading to it that creates either one set shot or one outlet, and if neither of those things are there, then someone has 5 seconds to try to make something on their own more often than not. It doesn't leave a lot of space for them to develop. Like, you don't just move around. Watch a college basketball game right now in the March Madness tournament, and you see guys just passing the ball around the perimeter, and they're all standing still just passing from one another. And a lot of those teams take 12 and 15 seconds to start doing anything because they're just passing and trying to figure out what they're going to do. That's what ball movement for the sake of ball movement is. The kind of ball movement you see dominate in the NBA is the product of – it's what happens after a team has already broken down the defense by moving the ball inside, back, outside, and around through pick and rolls to sort of get people moving and open guys up. We don't have time to do that if we spend 10 seconds trying to get a dribble handoff to a standstill.
Yeah. Sorry, I was coughing my lungs out on mute there. I totally agree on that. And even the Knicks, for that matter, like if you watch the Knicks today, obviously there's a big lack of talent on that roster. But they, God love them, they try to run the triangle, man. And
they go for
They go for it. They give their A effort, man. And today we saw Andrea Bargnani make at least like 3 jumpers out of a triangle with like 2 guards crisscrossing, peeling his man off. He comes to the elbow, hits the jumper. And I saw that. I'm like, even the Knicks, as bad as they are, have a more sophisticated offense that they run better than what the Raptors are running. If you take like an offense like the Knicks, something triangle-ish, and you put the Raptors in it. First of all, I don't know if the Raptors have the basketball IQ to execute it, but I would love to see them be in an offense which is more motion-based rather than what you just described, which is basically dribble handoffs on either side of the court. I just don't think we're going to get to see that under Dwane Casey like ever, man.
I mean, like, there are elements to that. Like when the Raptors offense was really rolling well at the start of this year and at the end of last year, it was when they were getting into their sets really quickly off in the corners, and there was a lot of side-to-side action with Kyle Lowry and Dwayne Wade in my dreams. Wow, I'm blanking on the team's leading guy. DeRozan, thank you. My brain just broke. And DeMar taking turns being ball handlers, trying to get things going and working the ball side to side and then creating penetration and getting something out of that. Like, that's movement that works. They run that out of horns, and when they get the play starting off early on, they can get some interesting looks out of that. But that's become less and less of an element in the team system as things have slowed down and the ball's gotten sticky.
All right, Matt. So let's take one final question. This is from at Canoe Girl. The girl has 2 R's in it.
Girl.
And her question is, what about the team option for DC? Or Dwane Casey she's referring to. Well, the team option isn't next year. The next year is a guaranteed deal for Dwane Casey. He's got guaranteed money there. It's the year after where he has a team option. So the Raptors basically signed him to a 2-year deal with an option for the 3rd year. So I don't know if the question is that should the Raptors pick up his team option? I'd say no, you don't. I'd say if they choose to bring him back next year, you don't make that call until the season ends next year.
I don't think there's a coach in the NBA outside of Greg Popovich who thinks he has job security beyond whatever seasons that's being played. Regardless of what the contract is, you might get paid out for that, but things can change so much and teams can taper off so quickly or tune a guy out that.
So Andrew, first round exit, if it happens this year, first round exit, is Dwane Casey safe? Don't tell me it's the manner of the first round exit.
I don't think it's guaranteed, but I mean, we talked about this a lot coming into the season too. One of the problems with saying, we need to change the coaching is there are certainly you have to believe that the coach you have can't change that, and a part of that is you need to find someone who's better. So while there might be someone out there who could do a better job, it's hard to come up with that name off the top of your head.
All right. I will leave it at that. This is a summertime discussion. I'm sure we'll come back to it. So let's take a quick break and then come wrap it up. All right. Welcome back to the final part of the podcast. Check on the schedule. We got Detroit on Tuesday, Chicago on Wednesday. That one's at home. And then the Lakers on Friday at home. It's a 3-game week. Andrew, pick one game you want to talk about here. Which one interests you the most here? Detroit, Chicago, or the Lakers?
Chicago certainly worries me the most after what we saw last week. It'd be interesting to see if they can adapt to that, but I just don't think it'll happen. So
this game has been picked up by ESPN. So if you think the humiliation last week in Chicago was bad, this one might be nationally televised in the U.S. But maybe it gets the team up for it. Maybe the national TV audience might motivate DeMar DeRozan a little bit. Maybe Kyle Lowry comes back. I don't know.
That's the thing.
Yeah, could happen.
Yeah, it's certainly the most interesting game on paper. Dare I say the only interesting game on paper. So Detroit, after being plucky following the Josh Smith trade, has really tapered off. They lost, I think it's like 14 of their last 16 games. They lost 10 in a row. Reggie Jackson's not really working out for them. Andre Drummond is a force, but a force that has not really got a lot of help. They lost all their supporting cast in the Reggie Jackson trade.
Yeah. We got nothing to say here, man. We got nothing to say. Detroit, I think, like applying my earlier template of looking at teams and predicting games. So Detroit, we could classify more or less as a terrible team. And I think the Raptors will pull that off on Tuesday. Chicago is obviously a decent team, so the Raptors will lose that one on Wednesday. And the Lakers are a terrible team as well, so the Raptors should win that one on Friday for a 2-1 week. Agree with that one, Andrew? Anything else to add beyond the 2-1 prediction?
No, I think that's fair.
Yeah. So we got 12 games left in the season.
2 is the magic number to clinch the Atlantic Conference, or the Atlantic Division.
What do you look forward to over these 12 games? What is the one thing that you're looking for the team to improve realistically over the next 12 games so that the playoffs are maybe a bit easier? And Patrick Patterson spoke about this before yesterday. He goes that the team's actually genuinely concerned about what might happen to them once they reach the playoffs. I think his exact quote, and I'm pulling it up. The internet's just a bit slow right now. And Andrew, why don't you fill some airtime while I look it up?
Sure. I mean, I think I'm looking forward to the team trying to get to a place where they're not going to fix the defense in 12 games. They're not going to get the offense back to where it was in the top 3 or the top offense in the league in 12 games. They're not even going to get close to either one of those things. Yeah. So what would be great to see them do is just to get to a place where if they're not believing in the system they're playing, they need to start believing in each other. That's a part of why the ball is not getting shared a lot. That's a part of why they're not buying into what they're doing, is because they're not believing in their own ability as a team. And if they don't get to a place where they play with confidence in not only their own games and their own shot, forget someone going through a cold shooting streak, but believing in each other and passing the ball and knowing that you have help on defense and knowing that they're able to work together and have chemistry, because that was always a key part to their success, then they're in trouble. So I'm really hoping they can find that over 12 mostly easy games.
Believing in each other, right? I think that deserves one of these.
We need a very special episode. That's what we need.
Yeah, I was waiting for you to sound effect today, so there you go. So here's the quote from Patterson. He goes, "Guys are concerned as far as our play going into the playoffs. As far as concerned getting ready for the playoffs and trying to make a solid run and not being knocked out in the first round, yeah, I think guys are really concerned." And then he goes on to say that whether we go 0-13 or not in the rest of the games, as long as we see an improvement on the defensive side, as long as we communicate and talk, as long as we fix the problem to a certain degree prior to going into the playoffs, I'll be happy with that. So he certainly sounds like a guy who gets it, that the results don't really matter in these last 10 games because you're going to clinch the Atlantic. You will probably get home court. It's a question of, does the team gel or look a little more cohesive on the defensive side so that they can deal a little better with teams like Washington, who, even though they've beaten in the regular season, are really built for the playoffs.
Yeah. And I mean, look, you take you take Cleveland out of the mix and Atlanta out of the mix, and there's nobody in the Eastern Conference who's really feeling their game right now and has immense amounts of confidence in themselves based on what they've been doing on the court. So you got to find a way to put together.
Yeah, and you talk about teams targeting each other. I mean, we talk about the Raptors. Who would rather face? We'd rather face Milwaukee or we'd rather face Washington. But you look at other teams right now, and they're looking at the Raptors, losers of 9 of 10 just prior to this 3 of 4 winning streak. They're looking at the Raptors and saying that's a team that you would want to face because they're playing so poorly.
Yeah, because they're playing poorly and because they're not playing with a ton of intensity. I'm not saying we talked earlier on, we don't think they're dogging it or not trying, but that intensity and that fire and drive is not necessarily there. That doesn't mean you're not trying hard. That just means you're not feeling it.
Yeah. And with that, I think, Andrew, it's time to end the podcast and look forward to a 2-1 week. And I'm going to the Chicago game, so that should be fun. I always pick games which the Raptors get thoroughly outplayed. So hopefully this one is an exception and we actually do something here. So
all right. Well, enjoy it and try and do something about all that phlegm in your throat.
And with that, we say goodbye. Bye.